Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Spar&Brawl. I hope you're having a decent day. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Sam, and we're back with a midweek edition of the Progressive World this time. So it's slightly shorter than our usual episode, but hopefully we'll be back with an even longer one this Friday. So Sam, as per usual, I was thinking I'll just give a quick rundown of what we have, and timestamps are down below as per usual. So we're going to start with our progressive press section. We don't do this often, but this time we actually have 3 articles I want to discuss. The first one is by Matt Taibbi, As America Falls Apart, Profits Soar. Really enjoyed that article. The second one is titled, Why Are Prices So High? Blame the Supply Chain. And that's the reason inflation is here to stay. That's the second part, is the more insightful part of this article, and it was written by a professor on this website called The Conversation. I don't know if people are familiar with it, but they have typically professors and PhD people who write articles for them, but they're not necessarily based on their scientific work. It's just that the writers are academics. And then the third article that we have, it's on opinion polls, and I got it in the French newspaper Le Monde, and I couldn't find an English version of it, unfortunately. So I'm going to tell Sam what it's about. But the article pretty much talks about this shift that has happened in polling with the move towards more internet-based polling, and how that has made polling and surveys even worse than what they were, and the journalist does a little investigative work. So I'll try to break that down for Sam and discuss this. Then we're going to move on to the climate change conference. It really seems to have disappointed everyone and anyone except government leaders and government figures. So the Novara Media, the leftist progressive YouTube-based channel based in the UK, did some nice reporting on that. We have some clips there, and then we're going to get going with the conversation. Then Briahna Gray posted a video just a day ago called Biden's Inflation Problem and the Trouble with Economists, with Claudia Sham. And to no fault of her own, it's definitely not Brianna's fault, but it was a bit of a confusing interview, to say the least. And just to show that it's not me saying this, we're going to also look at the viewer comments and discuss that video. And then we're going to end, as per usual, with our progressive tweets. So Sam, do you have anything to add, or should we get into this Matt Taibbi article?
No, let's get into it, Tashi.
Okay. So Matt Taibbi's article, as I mentioned, the title is As America Falls Apart, Profits Soar. So really the main argument that Matt Taibbi is making in this article that he just posted on his Substack, and I've subscribed to his Substack now, which allows me to read the whole article, which is great. And he's pretty much talking about how, right now everybody's involved in this Rittenhouse trial, and, it's very polarizing. And before that, there was the other social issue of the day, and before that, the other one, and so on and so forth. But during this whole time that this has been going on, during the pandemic, and even before that, really, corporate profits have been rising. So let me read a few extracts from here. On the day the Rittenhouse trial began, the financial data from firm FactSet released an eyebrow-raising report about the COVID-19 pandemic. The firm noted that companies in the SP 500 were set to post a net 12.9% profit in the third quarter of 2021. They pointed out that this was the second highest result since the firm began tracking the number in 2018. The only better result, the previous quarter, Q2 2021, when net profits sat at 13.1%. And then he wrote also, corporate profits in the second quarter of 2020 sat at 1.58 trillion. So granted, this was when I'm guessing they had gone down because of the pandemic. But 1 year later, that number was 2.69 trillion, a roughly 71% increase. And I'm showing this graph right now on the screen, which shows, corporate profits and after taxation, how they have steadily increased, that the drop in 2008-9 increased again, drop in 2020, and now at the highest place. So Sam, then at the end, while he presents his point, then Matt Taibbi makes like a second argument about the kind of state of America and where we're at. So I don't know if you want to comment a little bit already what I said, or should I also include the end of the article?
No, go ahead. I think, and
Yeah.
then I'll make some tiny comments.
Okay, so then Matt Taibbi goes on to say that 20 or 30 years ago, the big lie was usually a patriotic fairy tale designed to cast America in a glow of beneficence. So, nurtured in think tanks, stumped by politicians, and amplified by Hollywood, producers and media talking heads, these whoopers were everywhere. America would have won in Vietnam if not for the media. What else? Poverty didn't exist. Only the Soviets cuddled with dictators or toppled legitimate governments, etc. The concept wasn't hard to understand. Leaders were promoting unifying myths. However, in the Trump era, all this has been turned upside down. There's actually more depraved, dishonest propaganda than before, but the new legends are explicitly anti-unifying and anti-patriotic. Finally, he wrote that America is a sinking ship and his CEO class is trying to salvage the wreck in advance, extracting every last dime before battlefield Earth breaks out. It's only in this context that these endless cycles of hyper-divisive propaganda make sense. So I think I read quite a bit of the article there. So Sam, what are your thoughts about this article, Matt Taibbi's arguments?
Well, pretty much. I mean, yeah, it is in this, I suppose, atmosphere that this news cycle makes sense. That, I mean, he's, I think, correct in his description of the events, that pretty much every issue becomes sort of a beacon light for everybody to just put whatever they believe in and reflect project whatever they believe in into it, and try to maximize their own interest within a culture war. So yeah, and then at the same time, yeah, the big fat cats or big corporations are becoming richer and richer. But I would say it's, yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of it, isn't it? That's the thing, because if you want to talk about actual materialistic change, then that would not be in the interest of the majority of media class. Therefore, they rather talk about things such as this, which are more culture issue, or more at least crime, but more in a very limited sense.
Yeah, I think Matt Taibbi's,
So I don't know.
I think his point is very fair. I didn't read those sections. It felt like I read the whole article, but he was saying how, when have you heard in the media that profits are up like this in by corporations? You never hear about it and all this. So I totally agree. This is such an important story that is not being told as much. However, when he says at the end, it's only in this context that these endless cycles of hyper divisive propaganda make sense. I mean, I wouldn't say this is really new. This has been going on from before this, and not talking about important things that affect people's like material state, but talking about different kind of issues.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say it's getting, like, sometimes it gets worse. Sometimes I would say it's slightly better now compared to maybe during Trump presidency, but it's far worse than like maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago. Great article. I would say that, yeah, but I think your, not criticism, but your caveat is very much like, it's always been like that, pretty much. Like, as far as I remember, they always prefer to talk about race and religious. For example, I don't know, a school books has always been a big goddamn issue, what you teach children in, like, and it's usually over nothing, like over very tiny changes.
And things that
and
corporations
things like
don't mind, right? Like, for instance, when the Black Lives Matters movement started, corporations were so for that, right? Because that doesn't affect their bottom line, so they're not talking about their bottom line. So it's typically often been about a lot of social issues that don't hurt corporations, or don't really put them under magnifying glass about what's going on.
If they wanted to address Black Lives Matters properly, it could have actually affected their bottom line. That's why they just do the cosmetic. They just do the cosmetic stuff, as in put Black Lives matter in their, for example,
Yeah.
advertisements, which is, yeah. And yeah, no, they just do cosmetic stuff, but yeah, but I would say generally media, yeah, media is is it is in its direct benefit to just talk about things that are more sensational, because people like sensational things, to be honest. It's just, it's not completely media's fault as well. You know, just secret tapes, spy stories, no matter how fantastical, are going to get more viewers probably than let's say a detailed policy analysis of different Medicare systems.
Oh, definitely. And then you also just made this comment about it being worse during Trump than perhaps now. Yeah, like during Trump, I guess it was worse because all the issues, they brought it back directly to him, whereas now they have a more diversity of things that they talk about. So it seems a bit better. All right, folks, sorry about that. I had a little technical issue. But yeah, I was just going to say that I want to come back to this comment that you made about the media being worse during the Trump era than now. And that is possibly the case during that time, because during that time, they would worse everything they would try to bring back to Trump and the hyper focus. At least now they're just, they touch on 2, 3, or 4 issues at least. So it's a
At
bit,
least, yeah.
yeah. So in that case, it's maybe better than that. But yeah, if not, my Taibbi, I mean, main point in the first half of the article is that as we're busy with all these things, which they're not like meaningless things at all. I don't want to say that either, but the fact that, you know, such stories about the economy and stuff are often overlooked, and how corporations are doing during this time and all that is definitely a big story. So,
that's what I wanted to say. I don't think media necessarily even ignores that much. I do see a lot of coverage of that in BBC, and you know, I don't know about CNN and Fox, but you know, a lot of places people don't. And you know, every other day you hear somebody saying top 3 people in the world own this much of the rest of the world, and it's so commonly heard. I don't think it's nobody cares. I don't think they care, and they think like it's a maybe because everybody seem to love Elon Musk and all that, so I think they think it's all justified and all that. So
no, you're right that when they talk about like billionaires or a few people like that, or of course now they talk about the economy in the sense of inflation and perhaps the strikes and those kind of things, but talking about corporations in general and these kind of numbers, the way Matt Taibbi has showed it, I would say that they do less of that. But I mean, you know, BBC probably one of the better ones, if anything, in the mainstream world.
No, I mean, I understand. I would say like 90% should be about that and 10% about other stuff. But I do think, just from what I think everybody, I don't know, it seems to me everybody knows and just nobody cares. But
yeah. Okay, all right, Sam. I say that we move on to our second story on supply chains. Yeah. So the title of this second article is "Why Are Prices So High? Blame the Supply Chain, and That's the Reason is Here to Stay." So the main argument in this article, really, which is written by a professor, is that okay, now we know that it's the supply chain, but American leaders and where the Federal Reserve, which would be responsible for fighting inflation, they say that it's gonna come down, you know, but he's saying the fact that it's related to the supply chain and there doesn't seem to be no end in sight with the supply chain problem, at least for now, and that we're going into the holiday season, so there's going to be even more shortages. The inflation will not be going down anytime soon, probably easily continue in 2022 and all the way into 2023. And then it kind of highlight a few examples of how much problem there is with the supply chain. So there's this Nike example. It's Nike, but I thought it was pretty good. So as an illustration, let's look at Nike, which largely depends on Vietnam for much of its shoe production. It lost 10 weeks of production because of lockdowns within that country. And it's taken an average of 80 days to get shoes from Asia to retailers in North America, twice as long as before the pandemic. As a result, shoe prices are soaring like everything else. But yeah, his main argument is that we should expect this to continue. And because it's due to the supply chain, that doesn't mean it's going to get inflation is going to go away quickly, because the supply chain issue, it seems to be in such a mess and now affecting so many industries. I mean, I think it really got really worse in the past 3 to 4 months. I mean, I don't know how they were dealing with they seem to have okay grasp of the supply chain until like early 2021 or late 20s, and then everything went to shit. But
I
yeah,
mean,
that's kind of his main argument.
I think the corona crisis obviously put a dent into the whole just-in-time system, which is the business model that they used, because it was the most efficient financially, at least for a lot of businesses. But then at the same time, the infrastructure for a lot of energy supplies is very old and in need of repair. Climate change is adding to the problem. So it's just a amalgamation of number of issues that is reaching a tipping point. Sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry. And what's his name? Ryan Grimm, in that article that we kind of poked at a lot and said it was a hit piece on MBS, the way he framed it. But he did point out as something true, which is the price of oil has gone up. The price of oil has gone up, and that's also impacting inflation in so many ways. And there's also gas prices that are up. So yeah, that's another part of the story too. Supply chain plus energy.
And the demand's gone up, so the price goes up, all that. Yeah, I think, to be honest, it's just generally speaking, I think there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about, but I didn't do enough research to be able to talk about it properly, so I'm just gonna throw it out there. But one thing was that we talk about it more with the Briahna Joy Gray video. But besides the professor there, senior fellow there, sorry, you had Matt Taibbi talks about this, that inflation can be very good for the lower classes, but bad for can be potentially, but bad. It's very bad for the rich people. I don't really see the logic on that necessarily. I can understand if you say inflation could be good for distributors or middlemen rather than producers or people who own assets or land and shit. But I don't understand likeness, because when inflation will always get put, like the cost will always get pushed down to the consumers, because consumers are the weakest. So I don't know exactly what he means there, or what she means there, because she says a similar thing, but in her case we'll get to her, but whatever. But so yeah, I just like a little bit of clarification on that what is, but I should have done more research. I did, so there is that.
Yeah, can I just comment on that, I guess, before you make your second point?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that confuses me a bit too. I mean, of course, you can probably go find individual rich people or individual companies in certain sectors and point towards them, but that overall it's bad for rich people. I mean, also you look at the same time, you look at just in my Taibbi's article, he pointed out that corporate profits are still going up. And as Richard Wolff said, and as you said, the cost is being passed on to the consumer, most of it. So yeah.
Sure. No, but I'm just saying, okay, if you're a poor person, though, when inflation is high, and if you're smart, you can use what do they call it, arbitrage or something, you can quickly flip shit and get rich, right? While a lot of assets of the rich people might be devaluing relative to rate of inflation, right? So I can understand that.
Yeah, sure,
but
maybe.
I just but yeah, it depends, I think, on what kind of rich people or what kind of economic actor are we talking. But it was interesting. Besides that, though, I would say this is, I think, a historical trend of I would say increasing US. I don't think it's necessarily a terminal thing, and this is chronic thing, but I do think US is on a bit of a downward trajectory in terms of economic situation, and it's just the world is becoming more balanced in terms of global powers, by the way, not necessarily people on the ground. I'm not talking about like economic equality. I'm just saying that, so like the ability of the US to, for example, I believe dollar is, at least 2 weeks ago, dollar was the value of dollars was being decreased, and possibly with increased spending, it might get less. So I think value of dollar globally is getting down, and that might limit how much of US inflation can be exported to the global market, which was the system before. And so I would think it's a very slow decline. But yeah, I pretty much every economic or political economist I read, they say that above like 2.5-3% inflation is going to be the new normal in the US for the next future. And I must say again, it is so I mean, it is said that Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Apparently it's not clear if he actually said that or not, but it is ridiculous. It's somewhat scary, the parallels between Trump and like then you had Nixon, and then Ford, and then Trump, Nixon, Ford, and then now I think Biden very much may end up become the second sort of Carter or something. It is kind of scary, because not since Carter we've had this type of inflation, and yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Man, that just brings me perfectly to my last point, which was like, you remember when Afghanistan was gonna hurt Biden's re-election campaign? You remember when that was out there? I mean, that was a total joke, I think. But now we're something with this inflation. Now this is something that could definitely impact his re-election. I think the Afghanistan one is gonna be long. I mean, okay, you can bring it back into the debate, and like you've said, people don't care about foreign policy that much. I mean, with the way that the inflation thing is going now, that's going to be something, like you said, that could really hurt them.
Yeah, I think the inflation is going to be inflation, and the fact that they got relative, and it seems the whole the Build Back Better deal, the second one is not. There's a good chance there might not be even a vote on it, or probably might not pass the Senate. So I do think there will be a bit of a problem. I don't know. I'm just saying the parallels to, and then if second Reagan comes, that's just going to be Jesus Christ. Yeah.
And I mean, these Republican and Democrat elections, and we analyze them so much and everything, but it comes down to a few swing states. It's just about so close. It's just that's a tiny slip up, and the Republicans can easily win. I mean, as Gerald Horne mentioned during our interview, like 75 million Americans or so voted for Trump, who almost lost. So they just need a tiny boost, and it's theirs.
The Republican Party is not so much interesting to me. What it is interesting to me, if we'll go through another major shift within like American sort of, because the post World War II order, you can argue Nixon really started like finishing it, and then Carter started embracing neoliberalism, but Reagan was the epitome, and he basically said it was the official start of neoliberal age. Thatcher, same. So I wonder if somebody like that, somebody who, for example, imagine a smart or a hardworking version of Trump, that would be a shift from if it's somebody like Mitt Romney, or I don't care, like it's not that different from Biden, or Bush or whatever. But yeah, I'm just worried about that, really.
No, you're right. That is more interesting and concerning. So not just like any kind of Republican wins, but in fact, there is like another evolution in like main Republican talking points, ideologies, and policies because of this.
or yeah, or a or a democratic sort of
Mhm.
dark horse, or a or an
Well,
independent dark horse that is
those guys
uh,
don't seem to move much. So I don't know if
uh,
the Democrats will
yeah,
change much.
Ross Perot, at once a lifetime ago got a quite a lot of votes, and you never know with online stuff. Uh, anything, I just think anything is possible.
Hmm. Interesting. And I'm glad that you said the word online because I think that would be a good segue to our next story. And do you have anything else you want to add here?
No, just yeah, yeah, great art. Good, well, not great, but it was interesting art.
Yeah,
I
and
found it.
just maybe to end on a slightly positive note, according to economists surveyed by Bloomberg in October, inflation is expected to slow to 3.5% next summer and then hit 2.6% by the end of the year, which is still higher than the pre-pandemic 1.8%. But that's, um, you know,
I mean,
that's
look, there is
good case scenario. So who
yeah,
knows?
that's what do you. I mean, the reason inflation has been sort of between 0.5% to like 2% for the last 30 to 40 years in most of the Western world was very much a specific monetary policy.
Mhm.
So it is not unnatural to have inflation above that, and it's not even bad. It might be a sign of economic growth and all that. But yeah, it's so suddenly and stuff politically, it might become a big liability.
Yeah, 100%. And also the inflation in some sectors are really insanely high. So I mean, the impact
It
that they
depends
would
on
have on certain people are going to be very significant. But okay, Sam, as I mentioned, you said the word online,
online.
and I said that's a good segue. So to this article I read on opinion polls by a reporter for Le Monde by the name of Luc Bronner. So he he did a little investigative work, very little, and then just some normal journalism to dig into a bit more into these opinion polls. And I have a few specific things that I wanna read about. But his main argument that I gathered from it, if I was gonna say the top headline, is that now that we've moved from not even telephone or face-to-face based like surveys and polls, and this is mainly done because thanks to online and being able to do surveys and polls online, they've managed to reduce the cost of having surveys polls drastically, because now you just need someone to do the programming, have it set up. Before you needed all these humans who are making phone calls or doing face to face, and this has completely changed the industry, right? Kind of, he's saying. So this has led to kind of the creation of all these other like survey companies and stuff, which he says they're pretty much like marketing companies. And he was talking about some of the
I,
biggest ones. That is kind of the main point of his argument, and then I can talk about more specific stuff.
I would say they're very much like data mining type companies that sell information to
Mm-hmm.
marketing, I would imagine.
Yeah, he was just, so they're just more of them and they're doing it. Yeah, that is kind of the point. And then just look at this figure, as in like to back that up. I'll throw it back to you. So he's talking
No,
about
no.
French elections. Okay, so in 2002 they did 193 polls or surveys. In 2007 they did 293. So 5 years
Only
later.
online?
No, these are all the surveys, I believe, like online and non-online. I think all of them. Yeah, he didn't specify that. So in 5 years, there were 100 more done. 2012, there were 409 done. So 5 years later, another 100 added. In 2017, again, another 100 of these polls added. And he's saying that just because they're becoming cheaper and stuff, they're just doing it more and more, for, yeah, pretty much for no reason. Well, for making money for these companies. But yeah, this switch has also increased their proliferation and this kind of explains why surveys polls seem to be regressing and becoming less accurate, it seems, in many cases, even though they probably weren't even ever that accurate. but they're even
I
becoming worse.
Are they? Is that
I
based on
mean,
any data?
what people were saying, the polls got so wrong for the 2016, for 2020. So they're saying
Uh,
more than it usually
People,
gets wrong.
they got it wrong for 1991 elections in
Mhm.
the UK, and same headlines was. I don't think polls were ever
Yeah.
any good. And to be honest, I think two things I wanted to say that I would like. I think it's a bit of a bubble, like Google Ads and all that, because these type of companies can so easily inflate their numbers and inflate their data
Mhm.
without, by the way, doing anything illegal or sometimes unethical. If you're an empiricist and a positivist, which carries out this type of research most of the time, it's so easy to create a scientific data based on it and come
Mhm.
out with scientific conclusions based on nothing, or very little, or manipulating a couple of things and all that. So I think it's a bit of a it's going to be a bubble that's like Google Ads that will burst at some point, because I don't think, like, the money that's going into it doesn't, the number of companies, all that doesn't justify the, I think, the insights given.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, so that's one thing. And second, I don't understand, why are they going to these people? They're far better off just going to Google or Facebook and all the companies that monitor
Yeah.
behavior, because that's good data. Behavioral data is useful data for marketing, but these fucking surveys, come on, like, stop using surveys, stop
I guess
using opinion polls.
I guess the author, he would say, is because of how cheap it's become. And he talks about a few other ways that it's cheap, is that now they
It is,
mix a
yeah.
bunch of polls and like survey questions together. So one question like asks you about like your food, what you like to eat. Then the next one asks about like who you're going to vote for. So it just seems like it's this move to making it cheaper. And yeah, you gave this example of, the data and what's really behind them, and is it what they are. I mean, Facebook got into like, a big backlash because they were claiming, oh, people are watching our videos, but then we came to find out that no, when Facebook, if you watch 5 seconds, they're saying that you're watching this video, and then so you take that definition and you make a whole
Netflix does the
study.
same
Yeah.
thing. I think they changed it from like 20 minutes to like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you follow, I mentioned on YouTube, if you follow, I think YouTube algorithm now, because I've fallen asleep so much to YouTube, it just thinks I love watching live sessions of Congress and stuff, because somehow it just goes there. But yeah, anyways, but yeah, so uh, I it's just, yeah, we should, I think polls and surveys are usually the most useless things ever.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
so
let me just give a few other things that he mentioned as like how, it's gotten even worse. So he's saying with the telephone and previous ways, at least there were easier ways of making sure that you're not interviewing and polling the same kind of people, and there was less polling. So now he's saying, although like Ipsos says that you can only do two per month or something, this guy just made a bunch of accounts very easily, and he did like a dozen of the surveys in one day. And just look at this. According to Ipsos itself, 1,000 people partook in 11,700 surveys in 1 month. So only 1,000 people did 11,700 survey, meaning each of them almost did 12 surveys. And he's saying that there's pretty much a good chance that the same pool of people, and because of it's done online, these incentives that are online, he was saying the way that they collect people are the first people to respond to kind of. So they were, okay, we want 500 people to respond. All 500, as soon as 500 respond, they stop collecting people. Okay, they don't take the data from those 500, then maybe, they eliminate stuff. But he was
depends
talking
on the
about that.
studies.
Yeah, and then he was also talking about the voluntary nature of it is also like something that statisticians have
That's
always
the
warned, that this
that's the
voluntary
thing.
nature is very problematic, actually, having people partake based on voluntary basis. And these are not new things. So I feel like the reason that it's regressed, I would even say, is that they knew things that,
Anonymity is more.
yeah, that you shouldn't be doing, and now they've even put those away. So instead of improving polling, they're going the other way about it.
And look, there is a what was it? There is this sort of what was I gonna say? God
Do you want me
damn,
to say
today I'm
something
not.
funny while you think?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Apparently in these surveys and stuff, there's even product placement going on now. So it's saying because
Oh,
they often want to announce,
oh
like,
wait, wait.
go ahead before you forget. I have this
Sorry,
highlighted.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. Like, I think it was a very old joke or something that, yeah, like statistics and data is always skewed by the idiots and fanatics because they like, have you ever, like, I don't know, I've never ever, the people that in the street offer you to like fill in a survey, have you ever, and have you seen the people who's like are volunteering for that? They're the people, exactly the people who want to nag. They're the people who in the queue want to nag, and they just are looking for someone to listen to them. And so yeah, that's a very bad. And yeah, when you go online, there's anonymity as well, so one person can make like 16 accounts and whatever.
So actually, since you said that, I'll come back to the funny thing I was going to say with product placement.
Yeah,
Say the guy makes the exact same point towards the end. So he's saying now this voluntary has kind of switched it. Before, when it was on telephone and in person, people who had like more messed up ideas and stuff were kind of reluctant to say it. But now that it's gone voluntary and online, it's possibly attracting a lot of people who are exactly like opinionated about an issue, and if they want to share their opinion and they go about it. So instead, it's attracting more of these kind of people. So it's kind of like flipped it on its head a bit with this voluntary
I've seen a lot of focus groups, and I don't think and I've actually done focus groups and shit. And in my experience, the volunteers are not they are not too worried about expressing themselves. Let's say that's been my experience.
Yeah, maybe like maybe on like some political.
I'm sure
stuff.
When there is anonymity, it gets worse. But I'm sure when there is anonymity, trolling and joking, like I'm sure there's a couple of kids making accounts and just sending. And yeah, I think like the most racist thoughts ever or something, trying to eschew the data.
Yeah. So now that you said that, I'll add one more point before I say something. He's like, yeah. So the analysts that go over to like whatever's collected through these surveys, they have little things where they're supposed to adjust for these things, right? They look at how long the person took the answer to get rid of these things. But he said all these things are in the hands of the analyst. It's not, it's not generalized for everyone. So yeah, one guy maybe does this, the other one will do that. And finally, this one killed me. It's about the product placements within surveys. So he was saying that often the time that they want to announce these polls are like at nighttime towards 8 o'clock, and they want to do it, in a way to announce the results in a way that gets media attention. And this can be expensive. So one of the ways that they do it is that they partner with corporations, and the corporations in response get their products mentioned in the surveys or in the polls. So like, they'll ask a question about your product.
I guess sponsored by Coca-Cola or
no, like
like product, like
yeah. So
like
what do you think
placement as in?
Yeah, it's kind of product placement, like in the question, like instead of asking about X or Y beverage, you'll be like, okay, no problem. We'll ask about Coca-Cola specifically, so your brand gets into the survey as well. So it's pretty much like product placement for polling.
Yeah, I would love it if it's not unrelated. Like they're doing a survey on like African American population and Asian population and differences in educational studies, and then suddenly there's a question, what do you think of Twix?
So they probably do it just like that, so they could either put that in the trick questions that they put to make sure that people are paying attention,
control questions,
or like he was mentioning, now they mixed a bunch of different questions together, so they'll just bring in like food questions along with questions about politics, and put in your product or this or that in there. So yeah, it was interesting. That's pretty much all I got from it. And yeah, I really enjoyed highlighting this Le Monde article I was telling Sam. There's nothing like highlighting a newspaper. It's very satisfying. But yeah.
Yes.
You're not a big highlighter when you read, right?
No, not at all. I can't highlight. I take notes. I take
Okay.
notes in a different notebook usually. And yeah,
Oh, hey.
that's
Like me, it helps me read the sentence. Like I often go back and I like read it while like highlighting. It's just,
I by a pen I
yeah.
do points, but I can't highlighting. I'm sorry, but it always seems so camp and like the colors or have this what do they call it? They they're
Fluorescent, like
bright
bright colors. Yeah.
fluorescent. Yeah, fluorescent. And it just pisses me off. It feels I can't deal. I need my colors to be muted. I
I
can't deal
see.
with that much.
Interesting.
Just yeah.
No, I
Yeah,
feel
I don't.
like some maybe like
Yeah, I know.
students
It's
or
very
younger people,
aesthetical.
they highlight for no
Oh
reason and
yeah.
they take notes for no reason, but I'm not letting them like ruin the whole noting highlighting process
No,
just because they go extreme.
I did. My notes are pretty bad, but yeah, it's useful. Anyways, but yeah,
But yeah.
what are we talking about? But I don't
Okay.
read newspapers ever, so yeah,
I know it's
online
fun.
only.
Yeah. No, it's fun to read them when you can get your hands on every now
Did
and
you
then.
do
But
that or
I was folding it like 50 different ways because you can't highlight
it?
them. All right, Sam, I say we move on to our Progressive World online segment. So we still have two sections going to be quite short, and then we'll move on to progressive tweets, which are pretty fun, including this tweet by Sam Sater where he admits that he's nowhere near as smart as Glenn Greenwald. And I'm glad he at least said it. I wouldn't be able to put that out there in writing, but I think I'm in the same boat as Sam Sater. But we'll get there. You'll see, Sam. I'll show you the tweet. But yeah, Sam, I just wanted to, maybe this will be our last time that we're going to talk about COP26, so the climate
I
change
hope so.
conference. I know you're not a big fan, but Novara Media did this. Novara Media actually sent one of their people there, Aaron Bastani. And, it'd be nice to just hear what he has. So I thought people could just listen to his little breakdown of how his week there went. And he really doesn't seem to have been impressed with it. And so, yeah, damn it, it's not really shocking.
Aaron Bastani, you have spent the last week or so in Glasgow. What are your main takeaways from what has been achieved at this conference? What hasn't been achieved at this conference? The nature of COP26, is it all a big waste of time?
We're at COP26. There have been 25 COPs previously. I think it's fair to say that 24 were failures in and of themselves. There's been positive direction in some instances, less so in others, but 24 were failures. I think Paris was the one time it was kind of seen as a success. And then the question is this another failure? Probably, yes. So given the historic context and how COPs generally pan out, it's not that bad. It's in Britain. We've had, as a result, far greater coverage of it by the media in this country. And so it's important to sort of actually underscore how poorly we are doing. Because, of course, they regurgitate the press releases. They sort of like to repeat the positive bluster of people like Boris Johnson. But things aren't looking very good. And it's a failure across multiple nations. And despite what you'll repeatedly hear, that it's a failure because of the likes of China, India, it's generally speaking, overwhelmingly speaking, a failure of the global north, of the wealthier countries. Particularly the United States, Canada, Australia are the easy climate bad guys, Britain too. And it's important to say that somewhere like China is at least doing enough to make up for its historic emissions. That's what it plans to do. The likes of the UK, the US, basically no country in the West, in the global north is doing that. In terms of the particularities of what's going on in Glasgow, what hit me was that the actual nature of the climate movement has drastically changed in the last several years. It's no longer about polar bears, as lovely as they are. It's no longer about species extinction, as important as that is. But actually, what was being put front and center at COP26 was land rights, indigenous peoples, and habitats that need to be protected from capitalism. And that's not to say that's being an agenda being pushed by the powerful, because it's not. But it means that the face of the climate movement has changed quite dramatically. I don't think the media and its coverage of climate change has kept up with the changes in technologies, the changes in renewable energy, and, like I say, the changes in the climate movements. The media lagging behind is a big one for me. they're stuck in this quest for permanent optimism. We can do it. We can feel good about ourselves. No, we're in a really dreadful situation, and it's important to start with honesty. We're not going to hit 1.5 degrees C. Extraordinarily unlikely. Secondly, I think is just the brazen mendacity and hypocrisy of the countries involved. So a good example, Michael, is, well, we want to end deforestation by 2030. And of course, the bad guys in all this are Brazil and Bolsonaro. And the good guys, well, it's always, it's the Europeans, the lovely progressive liberal Europeans, calling on Bolsonaro to stop with his deforestation and, tree burning and destruction of the Amazon. And yet the EU signs a trade deal with Brazil to double imports of beef. Now, implicitly, that beef requires deforestation. The Europeans know that. They're not stupid.
Okay. So now that people have seen this clip, I don't know if you have anything to say, Sam, but I mean, the things that came that I realized from a little bit of coverage that I watched is that everybody except world government leaders seem to have been extremely disappointed with this climate change. I love how that girl, Greta Thunberg, she's even become too radical for these like climate change conference things. She's saying it's all bullshit and stuff.
So I mean, I really like her because she was a child when she started, but now I think she's 16. So she's, in my view, she's at the right age, has reached the tip. Like in my view, in these days, if you're 16, you must be pretty much as cynical as she is. And I was listening to somebody, I don't know on which podcast, but somebody was saying, she was very much, by the way, agreeing with her as well. But she was saying, it's just so sad to see that, like 16-year-old, 15-year-old girls, she sounds like a 67-year-old, like depressed old hippie or something. It's just,
No, but that's good. That's good. That before I was very agnostic over her, I didn't care. And of course I didn't hate her. Like some people hated her like crazy. I mean, of course I didn't hate her, but
I hated the coverage, the Guardian and all that, the way they covered her. But it wasn't her fault that they were douchebags.
And I think that's what woke her up. She's like, okay, you guys steal every word that I say and like put me on a pedestal and all this. And then what? I mean, she started this movement, I guess, 3-4 years ago. So she learned her lesson pretty quick, I would say. So kudos to her there.
I don't get all this like, we are disappointed with the COP26 and all that rhetoric from. What did you expect? What you thought John Kerry and like Xi and what do you think any of these people care about like environment that much?
No. And like, so some of the things, so climate denial is out of, like, it's gone, right? Nobody's like denying climate change now.
After 50 years.
Yeah. They're just all kinds of gaslighting. So apparently one of their focus is now like the Europeans and Americans. They really try to put a lot of the blame on India and China and warning about them. And on coal also, exactly. So apparently they somehow like managed to work it around that the words oil and gas don't feature prominently in any of the text, and kind of put all the focus on coal and kind of blaming China and India. And I was reading something else where like India wanted to make an amendment to the final text, and they forced India to kind of claim that it wants to do on everything in front of cameras and in public. Whereas in the past, where the US wanted to make these changes and stuff, they were allowed to go in the back room and come out so it's not obvious. So that's one of the things that I found.
India, go out, tell everybody what do you want to do.
Yeah, tell them right now.
I want to add some clause about coal.
Exactly. Jesus. So that's another thing. And then like in this clip, I think like he pointed out, Aaron Bastani pointed out the hypocrisy a lot, like, this switch on deforestation and blaming Brazil and all this. But then I went and looked, the EU did strike a huge deal with 4 Latin American countries, including Brazil and Argentina. For meat and other stuff as well, but that's one of their main exports anyway.
Well, that's one of the main things that causes deforestation.
So just talking about the hypocrisy there, which is, again, nothing new. It's just the new angles and ways that they're going about it, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one is, this is so easy, but I'm surprised they don't want to budge on this too much. And I guess they're thinking of down the line, which is one of the easiest things because you just have to throw money at it, which they've made these promises of giving 100 billion per year or over time to less developed countries. And they seem like they're really not like allowing that process to move forward and not agreeing on definitions and everything to prevent that from happening. So I don't know, rich countries really seem to be more developed countries who are responsible for historical emissions really seem to be not wanting to open that door of giving climate change money, it seems, to developing countries, although it's something that I thought it would be, it's an easy way to brush away the problem, but they seem to be like,
is it? And
I mean, you just have to throw some money and then they'll do some good promotion on you. Oh, they're helping with
you
this.
talk about money. I don't know. You seem to be running $1 trillion budget there.
Well, the
You throw
US
100 billion
and
there,
EU
100
are.
well,
Alright.
you know, you can steal that money. You can, you know,
Yeah,
do
no.
a lot of other things.
That's for sure. But that's one of the other complaints that have come out. But I don't think I have much
Oh.
else to add really on the climate change conference. So we can move on, Sam, to another video where I also don't have anything to add. I was so excited. I sent this video to Sam before I watched it. And then I was 7 minutes in. I was okay, let me correct myself. I was like, don't watch this because I don't want you to come here with the impression that I like it and you come with this whole
No.
and I wanted to prevent you from actually trying to listen to it fully. So full acknowledgement, I stopped watching 8 minutes in, and instead of me bashing the article,
no,
I'm gonna let instead of me bashing the interview, I'm gonna allow the comment section of Briahna's page to do that, so nobody can claim it's me. Go ahead.
Fair enough. I watched the interview and I don't even want to bash it or anything, but it was the most oddest thing I did do. She's actually, she's written academically on a number of economic issues. There's a rule named after her for spotting like recession cycles and all that. But just, I mean, this conversation felt edited or censored. Like I used to watch censored movies when I was very young on some state televisions. And, you know, it felt like that. It felt like, you know, like, yes, I am going to tell the business is done. Like it just felt there was a bit of a, and I really didn't understand what the hell she was talking about. Like really, I don't know if other people understood it. I don't have any criticism because I don't understand what she was saying. I mean, all I understood, the only part I understood was that we should also focus on careers in the country and trying to improve that. And of course, in some areas we should become self-sufficient, but in some areas we shouldn't. Inflation can be good, can be bad. I really don't know.
I'm glad you remember that. That's the only main point I also understood that she made. Which is that
I feel like I should. I feel like I had a religious experience or as close to it with watching that video. Yeah, I don't like.
But yeah,
yeah
she seemed like she had.
Briahna gradually asks about her. They're like, can you explain the mechanisms of that? And then she, I don't know. I really don't know.
Like people rightly so, they complain about us interrupting each other, but at least there's two of us, so that makes sense. She was interrupting herself like non-stop. Like she would start with one thought and then go into a different thought and then into a different thought and then say like something very basic, but like it's carrying like, you know, people need food or people need, and then like go to something else. So yeah, she was all over the place. And we can get, I think people in the comment section, they point out well. But can I give one substantial thing, which is what you said? One point that she made is like bringing back all the jobs and all that, you know, that's not very feasible, or even maybe we don't even want that really, but let's focus on the jobs that we have here, at least for now. Let's make those better. And then, yeah, she also added that we know we could make some things that are strategically needed at different times, make sure that those are made in the US. I think that was one of her most coherent thoughts.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, I mean, maybe again, there's a good chance I'm too stupid for it. And I think she did something that I sometimes try to do and I fail, and it does backfire. She tried to be funny as well with the Larry Summers story and her mom. And yeah, that's what makes Larry so dangerous, mom. And it just, and Briahna, to be fair, didn't help at all there. Like, no, like she just said, instead of like, she was looking for a tiny bit of laughter there.
Yeah.
But then, and
but
that
poor
didn't
Briahna,
help.
man. That wasn't an easy interview to follow. She didn't
booked
say
it.
much. Yeah, but she didn't say much because I mean, I don't know. Because Briahna in her recent interviews,
Yeah, I
she does a
think she
lot
was
of
shocked
argument
too.
and back and forth. Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, the whole thing was a very fun. It was very cringe, basically.
Yeah, it was definitely very cringe. So let's look at some of these comments. Now, we're not trying to be bad people here, but it was a little bit of fun. So if you guys think we're being overly
well, I
mean
am
or
a bad
something,
person.
but
I
let's
don't
look
think
at
this is really one of them.
yeah, I mean, we don't want to pile on someone, you know. I mean, she had good intentions, I assume, but let's read some of these comments. I mean, someone wrote the first one. She seems like a smart lady with MSM knowledge of how the world works. She goes off a lot of assumptions of how things to work, ignoring what people actually do. The fact that she goes on a lot of assumptions is just such an economics thing. I mean, they always have never seen a social science or a field which has just so based on assumptions. They're just based on a bunch of assumptions that they got from different
I'm sorry, but
places.
I have to.
Go ahead.
What do you mean? I don't think economy is worse than any other science in that
But
regard.
they're so based on other assumptions. Like so many of them are based on human psychology and behavior and how people work and people are rational. So a lot of the things that they say are based on those kind of assumptions.
It's a social science. And by the way, I don't even believe in economy as a separate field. I think political economy is a much more appropriate field of study. But if like, so what? Like, if a field of psychiatry or field of psychology is the same. I mean,
but I feel like they base themselves more on like their own findings and their own research. Whereas economists, I feel like they base themselves a lot on like research done other places, and they take those assumptions, and that is kind of their starting point, like classical economists.
I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. But anyway, I do think the person who left this comment, though, at least she understood it. Seems more than I did, because I didn't understood what assumption.
Yeah,
I didn't understand anything about this interview. Besides,
it was hard.
Like,
I mean,
I know she used to be working for the Fed, for the Federal Reserve and for the Brookings Institute, so she must not be very, lefty. But I didn't understand any of her inclinations, anything.
I mean, she seemed like she was a bit lefty in the sense that she cared for people and like workers, like that sense,
liberal.
Liberal. But yeah, Alan Boonville wrote, this person's brain has been melted by capitalism. But I think the person who really got it right is Russell here. He's like, is it just me, or was that economist just all over the place thought-wise? But when seeming to address the points in question, misidentify the problems, offered a quiver of non-solution each time. What am I getting here? So a lot of these people, Sam, I think had the same, and this one really pissed off some people. Higher production means higher wage. What the heck is she basing that on? The last 40 years proved that. So that's one of the points that I actually understood from her. And she said, like, listen, we need to like improve our productivity. If our productivity goes up, our wages would go up, which should be the case theoretically.
Did she
but
say that?
Yeah, and this person quoted it. Higher production means higher wages. And I remember Kimberly did this, and I remember clearly her saying that.
That's the thing. From her tone, I didn't understand. Did she say that in a sense that it should be like that, or it is like that? That's the thing. It wasn't clear when the way she talked. Like, we should care about. Suddenly she would phase out and go like close her eyes, and I do that sometimes when we too to focus. But like, yes, we should care about the workers, they're great and stuff. Higher productivity means higher growth. I don't understand if it was like a sudden sort of a position by a sort of left-wing demon, or was it a position by right-wing demon? I don't know. It was a very odd. That's the thing. I just, it wasn't coherent to me. But then again, and maybe it was one of the shorter interviews. Maybe if it was the whole, I don't know.
I doubt it, because the incoherence was like within sentence, within like each
Yeah,
e-
the
like
syntax.
like within a sentence or like an argument, there was incoherence, and I think it didn't get a lot of downvotes because this person Just Binia
Just
says,
people are
"I'm sorry,
confused. People don't
I
know what to
liked
do.
because I like your content." No, but people didn't like want to hate because of Briahna, I feel.
Oh, sure.
And others like Tabata wrote, "I'm sorry, I'm sure this lady's very nice, but I'm getting very lost listening to her."
Yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah. And
people. I
then
feel I need a drink after that. I must say.
and the final one that at one point is, does she have a complete continuous thought? So yeah,
That
40
was the problem.
upvotes.
Yeah, that
is
was the problem. I think
yeah.
that was the. I kept getting lost, and maybe she's just so like academically rigorous that it was hard to follow. But
Oh no, I
not
mean, no,
sure.
you can't say that. I feel like you're trying to be very nice and interpret these in nice ways, but she wasn't speaking in an overly academic way and all this. So these can't be the
she
reasoning.
Yeah.
She was just jumping from one place to another. She's not used to doing video interviews too much, or interview formats.
I think that's the case.
That could be it.
Yeah, that may be the case too. Yeah, maybe it was. Yeah. Anyways, whatever. Who cares? But it was not a very substantial interview. I didn't find it. Didn't help clarify anything. But again, if somebody can clarify to me how inflation can benefit the poor or how it can be leveraged, that would be quite. Yeah, I'm gonna Google it too. I'm not just help.
All right, Sam. I say we move on now to our progressive tweets.
Sure.
And have a little bit more fun and wrap up this podcast. So we'll just go through tweets in the order that I sent you. So the first one is from our friend Kyle, and he quoted a tweet saying, "Why is there a movie about Mayor Pete?" And he wrote to manufacture consent. I mean, Kyle's tweet is kind of funny, but I heard about this this Mayor Pete documentary on Breaking Points, and it just sounds like it was exactly what you expect.
Yeah, it sounds awful. And they keep trying to make Mayor Pete, and I don't know, I think with Obama, the great thing about him, he didn't have any baggage, but he's this, like, within 2 years he went from like nobody to superstar. And Mayor Pete, I feel like it's been taken too long, and now all this sort of his time as a mayor, his relationship with the police there, his activities in Afghanistan and all that, which is highly suspicious and all that. So I think, and I mean, even in that documentary, apparently, like, he does come across as a man very much concerned with his image.
Yeah.
So I think he's not going to be as successful as Obama because he's very much going for that. Even the way he talks, the way he pauses, and all that. But I to manufacture consent, I doubt it's going to help to manufacture consent. It's more to do with money, I would think. But
yeah, no, I just wanted to bring up the fact that there's a documentary about him and it seems like being shit. I mean, listen, we can hate on Obama as much as we want. He clearly had some skills that I don't think some other people who tried to replicate him even have, let alone other things.
I mean, whatever charisma is, he had it.
And he had baggage. I mean, I would say being African-American can be considered as a baggage. He just managed to flip it successfully. And others wanted him to flip it. Others wanted him to take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, he played the like perfectly. He played he walked on the line perfectly. Like, you know, he was black but not too black in his behavior, so to speak. I mean, there's a SNL sketch show in which it's fantastic. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, they come and explain to Obama that, look, like, there is a black spectrum, and like this, and it's different black celebrities, and it's like, these black celebrities, like, you know, are the ones that are too white, and these ones are the too black.
And where was Obama? All the way on the top?
I don't know. They were explaining. This was before Obama got elected. They were explaining, you should try to hit the sweet spot of, like, you know, thing. You don't want to go too. And then he chose Joe Biden to prove to the, you know, old sort of like white people who might have some reservation that, don't worry and all that. So he was, I don't think Mayor Pete or Beto O'Rourke, the two people who really try to emulate him, are not half as good.
And what about this? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of just a thought that came into my head. But what about this strategy? It seems like one strategy is like become kind of famous and popular and then go for one election and see how you do it. Or is there this other one, I guess Mayor Pete is doing? He's probably thinking, I'll run for president like 5 times, and maybe each time I'll become a little bit more popular just over time, and eventually I'll get that. So I don't know which strategy is better, just coming in with a big bang, giving it all for one election, or now he's in the public, so now he screwed up chance one, so he just has to do it over and over again.
I don't think he thinks about it like that. I think this time around he thought he could definitely win, and media, he was their first choice. Not just media, the Obama team, I think. Him or Kamala were their first choice. But I think, I think next time he's hoping that Kamala performing very badly in the polls, he might try to weasel his way into a candidacy.
But I mean, he had no notoriety really going. Like Obama had more notoriety than him a little bit, right? Like
Obama was a senator, man.
He was a senator, right? Exactly.
He was a mayor of some. I don't want to.
I think strategically,
South Bank. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe strategically jumped in it a bit too quick, because I mean,
he has been active in intelligence, so you can say public, in a way he outranks the president. So.
True, in that way. But yeah, I don't think anybody should worry too much about Mayor Pete becoming president. Maybe someone else will, but I highly doubt it.
I mean, we'll see. Depends on the environment and all that. We'll see. I really wouldn't believe Trump, Biden, who could have guessed any of them.
You're right. Okay, let's move on to the next one by Kyle Kalinske. And this was a bit disappointing because he just retweeted this article, "The Main Driver of Inflation is a Murderous Maniac in Riyadh," which Sam and I broke down in our video from last week, and we put the video up, which was a really weird, as Sam put it, like
framing.
hit piece on kind of MBS. I would say it's reductionist. No, I would say it's reductionist. And also
I don't care about MBS.
True. But I mean, it kind of ruined it. He made a decent point, which is like, let's not forget they're on purpose controlling the amount of oil that's being pumped and in supply. So that has led to the increase of price of oil. But then after that, he went to this whole thing of murderous maniac in Riyadh and stuff, which really undermined his argument.
Why do you say let's not forget that?
Because like sometimes it's not mentioned like why the price of oil has gone up. A lot of it has to do with a boost in the amount of that the demand, but is also being held back compared to pre-pandemic levels, like the amount of oil in the market.
I just haven't seen a lot of times whenever the price of anything that goes up besides gas, a specific country being dragged out, like whenever, for example, over 80% or 70% of oranges in the world are produced in Brazil, and all that. I never see if orange juice becomes more expensive, suddenly people, that maniac in Brazil, Lula or Bolsonaro, whoever is there. No, I'm sorry, but I know energy is something that affects everything because it affects transportation. It was an extremely reductive argument about a very complex nation like Saudi Arabia and the position they're in and the evolving relationship between Saudi Arabia and US, and then bringing that cheap shot of Jamal Khashoggi thingy as if like MBS has done something that any other world leader wouldn't do. Just the whole thing was very weird framing in my view, and it to me it wasn't hit piece so much as a sort of it reveals to me that majority of the people who consider themselves leftists are socialist nationalists, and I do mean that in a both positive and negative way. So yeah, their politics is that it doesn't go beyond that. They're as good as the word allows them to be.
Yeah. So I mean, I think whatever weight you want to give to like the main argument that he made and all that, it was definitely just completely overshadowed by the rest of the thing that he said and how the way he framed it. Exactly, let's put it that way.
No, sorry.
No, go ahead. No.
No, I just want to say it is extremely disappointing because I was just listening to Matt Christman, and I think he was correctly pointing out that in today's world, unless there is unless we have international socialism, it's not. I don't think we can overcome the current cycle of madness we're in. And when you see this sort of foremost leftist people in the most powerful nation in the world are still very much limited by nationalism. I doubt we're going to get any further than the social democrats or the communists got in Germany after World War One with Rosa Luxemburg and all that. So it's not gonna be good.
Yep. All right, Sam. This next tweet made me laugh. This next one made me laugh so hard. So pretty much Sam Sater admitting, that he just doesn't have the capacities that Glenn has, and not many people do. So Glenn wrote that for those who want to traffic in smears and lies, the two best venues are Twitter and dissent-free shows. It ensures never being challenged. This show, pointing at Sam Sater, lied about Jimmy Dore, claiming he bet on it. When I offered, since I know Sam lied, he scampered away. So he's referring to Jimmy Dore said that it was his producer that tampered that article. And then, what's his name? Sam Sater made a kind of tweet saying, oh, where do we take bets that this producer is fictional? And Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mate were all like, oh, let's bet on this. And apparently Sam Sater didn't respond to their bet. But then listen to what Sam Sater wrote.
Sam Sater said, let's bet, and they accept, like they said,
yeah.
Glenn said, yeah, okay, I get it.
Okay, so Sam Sater, I'm just not worried like you are, Glenn. I didn't scamper away. I just don't have the financial or chemical resources you have to be on Twitter with such energy and relentlessness. I don't have a nanny. That part really pisses me off. And don't have the brain neurochemistry. I think he's back to speaking the truth, which would allow me so much time on Twitter. Listen, I'm as impressed as Sam Sater is as how Glenn manages to put out this many tweets and go on this show and then write this article and stuff. But Sam, I'm sorry to say some people unlike us are able to do this.
I think, to be honest, it seems to me the chemical resources is sort of, maybe he's implying drug use. Like I don't have a nanny. I don't have a nanny, implying that you're rich type. I don't know. But I would say he had time to respond to this tweet. So he probably could have added, I accept your bets.
Oh, that's true. But man, the nanny one is a really like shitty jab. Like what, the Sam Sater take his kid to the show? I don't see it there. So that means it's either with like someone at home who can take care of it, or maybe he gets a nanny, man.
Maybe he lives, I don't know, maybe he spends all his free time with his children and his wife takes care of them and he doesn't have a nanny. That doesn't make having a nanny or not having a nanny.
No, I know for sure.
Have nothing to do with
absolutely ridiculous.
It's personal bullshit. Yeah. I mean, but I would say, you had time to respond. I'll explain you're not wired, and I'll just say I accept the bet. Sorry, I didn't see the tweet before. I'm not on Twitter like you a lot. I accept it now. It's not that difficult. I mean,
but man, just with his output alone, Glenn can really like squash all these kind of. I mean, when they came after him, when what's her name, Chelsea Manning came after him. And within a night, Glenn Greenwald had the article up. He had all the tweets up. Like, it would take me a week to even think about it, get my thoughts right, be like, okay, I'll get back.
By the time I release it, the news cycle has moved on. Who? What's happening?
Glenn right there. As soon as Chelsea Manning was done walking there, he grabbed her by the shirt. He's like, not that fast. Come back here, buddy. Come back here. Sit down.
Do you think he has articles pre-written ready with like names and like section with evidence, just like left blank to be filled?
just the fact that he could find those DMs that quickly was impressive. Me, if I need to find a contact number or something on my phone, I'm like, oh, I don't have it. I didn't save this. This went away with my other phone. This happened. Him, no problem. In 2 seconds. Even that was it. But yeah.
While saving a dog.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to talk about the nanny thing, but yeah, Glenn probably has 5 times more kids than Sam Cedar has, and 10 times the dogs. But anyway,
again,
let's put that behind.
It's so weird to me that he doesn't accept the bet. Just accept the bet.
True.
Just everybody's deflecting.
Maybe he did somewhere else. Maybe he did, but I doubt.
Maybe
he should have done it there. He should have done it there. No, that was a bit
or
of
maybe it's a tweet after that. So maybe
I got that from you. But let's wrap up with a more serious story, Sam, with this tweet.
We have another.
So yeah, just the last one. Democracy Now! Had tweeted their story about schools closed in New Delhi due to toxic air quality.
That happens quite often.
Yeah, damn.
Every year in winter.
In India and China, right? And maybe some other countries, other places.
India, China, Pakistan. Yeah, a lot of. In winter, the polluted air comes down. It becomes really bad. So, and people die a lot more. Accidents. I'm sure it has nothing to do with, anything.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, in our last podcast, we talked about I think like a few million people die in India each year due to air quality, like 1 point something million or something. So yeah, very, very concerning and serious situation that doesn't seem to be, I mean, addressing them would, require probably a whole change in all their cars. I would imagine that a lot of air pollution comes from cars and where your energy source comes.
I mean, India is still relying on coal for a lot of its energy, especially in times like this. Yeah. But India, I know they just phased out diesel. So I don't know, which some people say is a good thing. Some people say it has little effect. It was more to do because diesel was financially not very, like diesel cars.
I see.
So it's sad.
And my understanding is that like a lot of new cars, regardless of, I mean, that's why in Europe, I guess, or like in other countries, you don't have the same air problem because new cars don't give out as much pollution somehow. But older cars, regardless of what they run on diesel or gas and stuff, they give out a lot of immediate that kind of pollution, air quality pollution.
Yeah, and anyway, electric cars need electricity, energy to run. So it's just depends on how much, whatever, all the details.
Okay, all right, Sam. I think that brings it to the end of this little midweek The Progressive World podcast. And hopefully we'll be back on Friday with a longer episode and see how the stories unfold until then.
Sure.
All right. Well, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And more importantly, please share all your thoughts, comments, questions, criticisms down below in the comment section. I will make sure to get to them. If not, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.